We're lucky to be in Missouri in St. Louis.
The LGBT scene in St. Louis has really grown a lot within the last few years. Not necessarily in size or numbers, but just in unity.
Oh my goodness! There's a gay history tour here in St. Louis. Oh yeah.
St. Louis City has had a history of movement within the LGBT community that really picked up after Stonewall.
The Stonewall riots happened, it was the first time the LGBT community said they had enough from the police going into this bar in New York City and having raids, because there was drag queens, Latinos that said they had enough and they fought back. And it was 4 days and it was something unheard of. That was the start of gay liberation. That's why we had the Pride Parade.
That Halloween of 1969, we sort of had what we call St. Louis's Stonewall, and 9 drag queens were arrested outside of a gay bar off of Olive. And they had a phone tree back then, for these types of situations. And they got about 100 people down at Central Station within an hour. And a lot of the men were drunk, and so they were feeling their oats, and I think they didn't release the 9 queens until like 9 a.m. the next morning. And they would publish your name and where you worked. That was your punishment, and you'd lose your job. But as a result of that anger, they had decided, well, let's meet. This is bullshit. And out of the anger of that meeting in the foyer that took hours to get these queens released, the Mandrake Society started, and that was our first gay rights organization here in St. Louis. Mainly they hosted a Halloween ball fundraiser. It was more of a social club in the end, but on paper it was the first gay rights organization. And just out of that, a lot of these gay rights organizations and ideas and leaders who discussed how to decriminalize homosexuality were born.
I've been very active in the lesbian feminist community and the gay community in St. Louis since the 70s, early 70s.
And we did this all before computers.
Yeah.
We didn't have computers or cell phones.
Right. Right.
It was tough in the 50s. Job, beat up, going to jail. 60s wasn't too great. Trying to rent an apartment, beat up a couple times, but I mean, I was never put in the hospital with it or anything like that. But, after a while, you just said, to hell with it, I don't care, this is what's happening.
The Mandrake Society published the first LGBT publication in St. Louis called Mandrake.
In the 70s, gay media was a little bit more about a newsletter or something, but hardcore real media really started in the late 70s, early 80s.
30 years of media, stories that really impact our lives that we may not see in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch.
I actually have my own personal human rights campaign and how I present the LGBT community to the mass market. If I can get Aunt Betty Sue in rural Missouri to read a Vital Voice magazine at her hairdresser's, and she reads a story on a lawyer who happens to be a lesbian, or the CEO of a bank who happens to be a gay man, or an engineer at Boeing who happens to be transgender, And they read those stories and they see those people and they say to themselves, well, they're normal. They're out there doing their thing. They're contributing to life and society in America. Why can't they have the same rights as anyone else?
You know, we have kids, our families, our partners that we love, and we go to work every day, pay bills every day. It's the same thing.
You know, just being gay is just a very tiny part of who you are.
We're loving and Christian first before we're gay. That's the way I look at it. Does that make sense? Okay.
I'm just the man who lives up the street. You know, I have a couple dogs, my boyfriend lives with me. We don't bother anybody.
You know, we go grocery shopping just like everybody else.
I can talk about sports. You know, I played pretty much every sport, so I could talk about sports, you know, if I have to with a straight guy. You know, I could talk about the ballet.
Equal rights would be phenomenal.
I look forward to the day that, yeah, it's not so divided, but I also want to keep our individuality too.
I don't want us to lose our culture. I don't want us to lose our identity. I always want us to have that uniqueness. It makes us, you know, just a little neat, I think.
Oftentimes conservatives bring up, you know, the flamboyancy or the frivolity and, you know, the LGBT community.
You know, there's a lot of people that aren't big and splashy and show tunes 3 times a week too, that, you know, have regular jobs or they're teachers or they don't care about, you know, going out every night of the week.
So much changes when you know somebody who's gay. You know, when these legislators are voting for an anti-gay piece of legislation, a lot of times they can't put a face to who they're affecting. And if they've got, you know, a colleague who's going to be affected by this and gets in their face and says, hey, this is how this is going to affect me, that just speaks volumes. So the fact that we've got Shane Cohn on the Board of Aldermen now, it is phenomenal.
There's finally an open voice, you know, sitting in discussions and, you know, in a position of influence at the table. In terms of today's movement with the LGBT community, you know, certainly marriage equality is something that's very important to a lot of folks.
Ed and I have been together 12 years, and the Iowa Supreme Court had ruled in favor of a couple to receive same-sex marriage. We just started this bus idea, and we filled it with 17 couples, including ourselves. And it was amazing. We brought clergy with us. We rented a church. It was really a production in a short amount of time, and today we'll never forget.
In the city you have domestic partnership registration, which is nice, but it would be nice if that would spread all over St. Louis.
You know, any law passed in the city does not impact anything in the county or, you know, any one of its municipalities.
Rights that are given to couples are given by the state. So the city doesn't have many rights to give. They give the right to hospital visitation and to visit your partner in jail.
In essence, it doesn't mean anything. And until it does, means something across the board, universally, just like everybody else, it doesn't mean enough.
And I hear that a lot from our friends and couples that, you know, again, together for a long time, they're like, we're waiting for Missouri. Well, I usually say, well, hell will freeze over.
It's actually recognized in many states. It's just not recognized in Missouri. Even though the government isn't on board necessarily where they should be, companies are. It is different, even in Missouri, totally different.
It's the stance someone takes. You know, to say like, I'm going to defy what Missouri said, so we're going to go somewhere. We're going to take a stand. So in that regard, our buses are political.
Not looking for some kind of special marriage, just the same marriage that everyone else has.
He always told me I was his one and only, his true love.
We have a client, Kelly Glossop, whose partner was a state trooper, put his life on the line every day going to work. And for the families of state troopers, Missouri provides a special benefit for state troopers that die in the line of duty. It doesn't happen often, fortunately, but it happened on Christmas Day in 2009.
We exchanged rings in 1997 on Christmas Day. We had our own ceremony, but Dennis wanted to wait until it was legalized in Missouri before we actually got married.
Because Dennis and Kelly couldn't be married, they were denied the protections of marriage. And one of those protections was that benefit.
The money doesn't mean anything to me. I would trade it all just to have him back. He was my soulmate.
What most people can agree on is that it's not fair to deny couples, committed couples, the same protections that other committed couples have.
Having social infrastructure is extremely important, particularly for young people to value themselves.
I came out when I was 17. It's been about 3 years since I've been fully out.
The young people today, they're way more out at a younger age than what we were.
Whenever I see our young people marching the Pride Parade, I'm so proud. They've taken over the streets, they've taken over the community like they own it, and you know what, they should.
To have young people, some as young as 13, marching in the streets to say their lives have value and they are out and proud of who they are, that's transformative for everyone.
I think we all owe it to everyone else in the community to be out, because then people know. Heterosexual people will know a gay person in their life, but if we're not out, then there's no way that it's going to get better.
Just by being us and being out, then yeah, that's the best way to do it. And they see that we're just like anyone else, we're normal.
SAGE Metro St. Louis, this is Cheryl, may I help you? SAGE stands for Services and Advocacy for Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender Elders. We're a nonprofit organization, and our primary focus is to serve the older adult gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender community members through service, advocacy, and community awareness. And we just wanted to let you know that this coming Monday at 11:30, we'll be having a SAGE luncheon, and we'd be happy to have you join us.
Actually, I wanted mostly to see who was going to be here, because I don't get out too much.
That's why I'm here, just meeting people and listening to their issues and seeing how I can be helpful.
If it hadn't been for this particular population, I probably would never have been able to have self-acceptance as a gay man.
The fact that SAGE exists is a huge step forward for our community in terms of taking care of our aging lesbian and gays in our community.
I'm starting to shrink.
We have over 60 organizations that have joined our referral network. They have to agree that they will serve the LGBT community in a safe, welcoming, and non-discriminatory fashion.
We've seen, lots of changes, lots of organizations come and go, but every time a new organization starts, we take another step forward.
It is so much better. It's not perfect. We have lots of ways in which our lives are constrained and we're treated differently.
When I first started working, I'm a retired school teacher. I could have been fired for being a lesbian, and I saw people fired for being lesbian and gay.
People in the gay community can get fired for being gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgendered.
And there is no statewide protection and no federal protection preventing employers from discriminating against employees based on their sexual orientation or gender identity.
The city of St. Louis, through the help of Alderman Shane Cohen, passed the Non-Discrimination Act to include